20% is African American or black, and you might say, why are you using both of those words? Because we have tens upon tens of thousands of people who are black but not African American, and may well look at the world and racism in somewhat different ways. The world today has a lot to do, and should have a lot to do with culture. And you have 1,200 children born a year, I think, in Indian River County. We have 35,000 children born a year in Miami-Dade. But part of the message I'd like to impart to you is the exact same principles and challenges exist in both of our communities. We have fabulously rich people. In fact, the other day the Herald had a story. There are 30 billionaires, not multi-billionaires, in Miami-Dade County. We also have stunning poverty. We have a hell of a problem with people being able to afford rent. It has an enormous impact on the teaching profession and other. We have a huge service industry, tends to be paid less. But the principles are the same. And I'm going to go on for another 2 minutes. Can you live with that?
Absolutely.
But if I had to leave you with one message today, it would be understanding what a movement is. So I'll frequently ask an audience, what was the civil rights movement about? And almost always people will tell me it was about black people, African American minorities, at-risk, disadvantaged, certain neighborhoods, and so forth. I argue it wasn't that really at all. It was about an American sense of equity for everyone. The feminist movement, I would argue, wasn't just about women. It was about all of us and so forth. So I'm going to give you, I'm first going to tell you, if we had tried to pass voluntary pre-kindergarten in Florida, there are only 4 states. We are one of them, and we are not a famous education state in America. I know this will be almost an apocalyptic statement, and it's stunning to you to hear this. But we're only one of 4 states in the country to have free pre-K for 4-year-olds. Now, we need to do a lot of fixing of it, but it's embedded in the Constitution, and we can work with it. But if we had tried to pass it for those children, whomever they might be, and however well-intended we might be, it would have never passed. And one more part of the story. And I'm going to meet with some people later this afternoon to talk about all of this and what you all can do. It's within your power to do in your own community. You're already doing a bunch of great things. But I suspect you'd say, we could do more. And I have every sense that you will. In 1988, in what was then called Dade County, the state attorney was a woman named Janet Reno, a very famous American. Later became the longest-serving attorney general in the history of the United States of America. So she tried to take advantage of a law passed in the early 80s that lets any county have a dedicated funding source for children, generally called Children's Services Councils. There are now 9 of them in Florida. The last one done was last fall in Alachua County, which is Gainesville. And she argued, and I knew her quite well, a good human being. And as a prosecutor, knew the consequences of the failures of not investing in early education. So she argued we ought to help the children over here and over here, meaning almost stereotypically, quote, those children. Deeply well-intended. It failed 2-1. I argued in 2002, I retired in 1999, spent a lot of time working on this. What do you pay county commissioners in Indian River? How much?
60,000.
Say it really loud because you're dealing with old people.
65,000 around.
65,000. We have an operating budget in Miami-Dade County of $7 billion. We pay county commissioners $6,000. Nothing you've ever heard at any school that you've ever been to would say, my God, this is really smart political science. So the state foreman in Miami-Dade would be close to $100,000. You're not rich at $100,000, but you're clearly fully in the middle class. It's been up on the ballot 12 times to move it to the state formula, and it has failed every single time to move it there. So we're not an easy place for taxes to come about. I argued it was about everyone's child, while knowing that certain children need far more and ought to get more. But it needs to be about all of us. America needs to be about all of us. I hope that's not corny and old-fashioned to anybody, but I firmly believe that to the bottom of my soul. And I put a 5-year sunset on it. I said, try it for 5 years. If you don't like it, you can dump it. I raised a bunch of money. I ran a political campaign. We had a PAC, non-tax deductible money, and we passed it 2-1. So it comes into effect in 2003, meaning in 2008 we need to pass it again, or it goes out of existence. And I raised a lot of money. I raised $1.7 million in PAC money. Ran a campaign. We deliberately called what we do the Children's Trust, because I think trust is the great issue in my own community. I suspect in yours, and I know in America. It was the 3rd trimester of 2008. Remember what was happening? We were going to hell in a handbasket in this country. Miami is a get-rich-quick place, therefore it's a get-poor-quick place. That's the history of Miami and Coral Gables and places like that. So houses were underwater, figuratively. Maybe someday they will be literally, but it was then figuratively. Gas prices were way up. We had a brutal presidential campaign, and Cressman could tell you financial institutions were in significant trouble. Not a good time to have an election about a tax. This time we won it with 85.4% of the vote. It's all about trust. It's all about everyone's child. And people, contrary to what people say about nobody's going to vote for tax and don't want taxes, they'll vote for tax if they trust you and trust how the money is being spent. So we call it the Children's Movement because it's about everyone and everyone's child. We've been able to make far more progress as a consequence. You get to answer a question, Dr. Or ask a question.
Well, thank you for setting up that context, because that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Here in Indian River County, we have approximately a little over 150,000 residents. And during your years in Detroit, and I think that there are some people from Detroit here in the crowd who might have met earlier. During your years in Detroit, you talk about the quality and composition of the newsroom and how that became your emphasis. And you really talk about that in a powerful way in the book. So if we would translate that to this community, 150,000 people with clearly a racial, economic, and cultural divide, you talk about good intentions. How can we move from having good intentions in the community, and there are a lot in this room, to really creating collective impact and making a difference for the children in our county?
So in Detroit, I don't think it will surprise anybody, there's a far majority black community. The Detroit Free Press, first as executive editor and then publisher in 1978. I went to Miami in 1989. We had 4 minority professionals on the staff, on the newsroom staff, a large newsroom staff. Where I come from, that's both an immoral and a stupid practice. I could be the nicest white liberal progressive person you have ever met in your life. I am not, but I could be in theory. And if I told you I knew what it was like to be black or gay or transgender or a lot of other things, or a woman, you need to be very skeptical and wary of me. I think I can learn. I'm eager to learn, but I need to surround myself with people with look at the world differently than I do. may have faced significantly different things in the world. The great power in America, I have been to a lot of countries to look at early childhood. I've been in the Democratic Republic of Congo and India, and Bangladesh and Malaysia, and most of Europe to look at early childhood. So I kind of have a fairly good sense of what's going on in the world on this subject. And in the last 5 years, I've been in 26 states. So I can tell you what's going on in Guilford County, North Carolina, or Sacramento, California. And there are pockets of building a movement all over this country. The great power in France, which has a wonderful system called École Maternelle and other schools, the great power in France or Sweden or Italy or Democratic Republic of Congo is the federal power. The great power in America, I would argue, is a local power. The only people who care about Indian River County are the people who live here. I'm exaggerating a teeny tiny bit, but largely the only people who care about Dade County live in Miami-Dade. And no one in this room is going to save the world, but anyone in this room could serve as a wonderful example. Any community could serve as a wonderful example. And then people in Flagler County or Marion County or Manatee County would say, my God, look what they have done in Indian River County. That's about the best you can do. The power, in my view, is the power to convene, to gather people together. I frequently say, and maybe it is misunderstood, or maybe I just simply said it wrong, but I have frequently said that children's advocates are like crabs in a bucket. Do you understand the metaphor? Which is, have you ever seen, maybe you've never had, but if you have a bunch of crabs in a bucket, they try to get out, and other folks pull it back down. And I'm not being smarmy about children's advocates. They're wonderful people. They work hard. They frequently believe that if it isn't perfect, it's not worth anything. And I don't think life works that way. I don't think progress works that way. It is evolutionary rather than revolutionary. And so I'm asked to speak a lot of places around the country, partly because they're not quite sure that Miami-Dade is in the United States of America. And in fact, it is very much in the United States of America. But if you can do it in Miami, which is many, many aspects, if you can do it in Miami, well, you probably could do it in St. Paul, Minnesota. And to me, you have a very manageable opportunity here. And I'm not suggesting leaving out child advocates. I want all the people at the table. But I also want the faith community, the health community, the education community, the civic community, the business community. And you heard from Meredith Egan, you heard of the quotations she carries in her own home. I want people to understand the return on investment for all of this. I met the sheriff in here, and he understands totally what I'm talking about. That what our failures lead to spending a lot of money on police, prosecution, and business. And it's not that we don't have enough money in America. It's a matter of priorities. Somehow we figured out how to spend $2 trillion to bring democracy to Afghanistan. That's what it's cost. We won't achieve it. It is not within our means to achieve it. In fact, we'll make some bargain with the Taliban at some point. And like Vietnam, which I remember so significantly, we'll make a bargain as we did with the North Vietnamese, and then we'll get out of the country and say we did our job, and then the North Vietnamese or the Taliban will do whatever they want. I'm not a cynical person. I was a paid skeptic for 35 years, but not a cynic. And there's a big difference between the two. I'll never be a cynic. I think we have an opportunity within our grasp to understand what this imperative means. You want safe streets, you want people to grow up and contribute to community and country. Well, then you need to understand in Florida that 30% of children start school way behind, and then most of them get further behind. You need to understand that if you have 100 children at the end of first grade who are lousy readers, at the end of fourth grade, 88 are still lousy readers. Yes, we've made progress in education in Florida, but 43% of third graders cannot read at minimally proficient levels. These are scary figures. And why is the Florida Chamber of Commerce, which is not a major leftist organization in Florida, why is it so interested in this subject? Because it's thinking about the workforce of 2030. And we live in very local communities. I'd love for you to think in terms of feeder patterns. A high school, a middle school, an elementary school. Feeder pattern, right? I want you to think of what comes before elementary school as a feeder pattern. You live in a country, in a community where 65% of women with children between birth and age 5 work outside the home. This is not my growing up on a farm. This is a very, very changed world, and the number is only going to get higher. And I'm not making any value judgment on this, so for God's sake, don't think it, but we live in a world, in a country, in a community where 40% of births are to single women. Half of them have no significant other. Well, what's that mean? In the state of Florida, that's 45,000 births that are going to be raised fully by single parents. Now, a single parent can do a spectacular job, and two parents can mess it up royally. But you would rather have two loving, nurturing, knowledgeable adults in the home if you could. And if I had to tell you the single thing that I care the most about and work the hardest at is parent skill building. I know that parents love their children, but frequently they don't know what to do. They don't know how to go into Publix and use it as an early literacy experience with a child in the shopping cart. Let's get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. Oh, this is a square. This is a circle. There's a butterfly on the box. These are wings. What do wings do? That's all early literacy. It's an extraordinary opportunity. And the return on investment is simply so powerful because we live in a world where it's not Manatee County when I went to high school, where everybody can get a job. I'll give you one more statistic. Some of you have heard this. You care deeply about this country, and so do I. For ourselves, for our children, for other people's children. But 3 out of 4, how many people have served in the American military in this room? A number of you have. 3 out of 4 young people ages 17 to 24 cannot enter the American military in the United States of America. Have a substance abuse problem, criminal justice problem, an academic problem, or physical problem. Shouldn't that scare the heck out of us for the future of the United States of America? It does me.
Dave, let's talk about building a real movement. You talk in your book about that, and you certainly accomplished that in Miami Dade. There are a lot of folks here who are starting to generate that enthusiasm and energy here in Indian River County. What does it take in your mind to build a real movement? And you already alluded to really embracing everyone's children, not thinking about those children. But what other suggestions do you have for folks in the room who are thinking about that?
Well, first I go back to convening. I think you need to gather people to do it, and then you need to gather more people and more people and more people. And no one ought to feel shut out of the process. when I got started on this, I started with several hundred people in 3 days of strategic planning. And then we did 21 community forums. And then we gathered 4,500 people in one room. And we had people vote. What was the show? I Want to Be a Millionaire or something. That's not the name of it, but you know where people in the audience vote. Well, they all voted on what they thought the priorities ought to be. So the first step is gathering people and listening to people what they think. As sure as I or you might be of what's necessary, need to listen to a lot of other people about what they think is necessary. They need to feel ownership of this. The leadership needs to come, in my view, from the private sector and particularly the business sector. You need uncommon suspects deeply involved in this movement. People like the former president of AOL. Oh my God, is that person here? It's a stunning coincidence. But you need to involve people who probably were never identified with this subject. And don't get me wrong, I want every educator, every health person possible involved in this. But I want some people also, in order for the children's movement to work, I need to know the governor of the state of Florida and the House Speaker and the Senate President and lots of other kinds of people. While I think the initiative needs to be significantly private, boy, you couldn't avoid having the public sector as a major part that simply controls too much money. The legislature is meeting right now. The CEO of the children's movement has just been elected to the legislature, and you'll hear more about Nancy Lucas. Several of you know him. Pretty extraordinary human being, Kim? Yeah, big time. But we need to know who's who and how to work things and how do you gather people, and when you call, people need to take your calls and so forth and so on. So it takes people like Cressman and others to be significant leaders in all of this. And then you've got to you've got to work, in my view, fairly covertly for a while. I wasn't looking for any publicity. And you also need to do regular pony tricks. Phil, you don't know what I mean by a pony trick, do you? No, see. You need to have some things that you can tell the community that you've actually done, that this work means something. And real specific things happen. And here's the kind of outcomes we can get or are already getting. It needs to feel real to a whole bunch of people. Because the tendency is to pat people like myself on the head and say, you're doing noble work. Well, I think there is some nobility to all of this, but I also argue it's fundamentally practical work. And you need to be, if you'll let me say this, you need to be a bit evangelical about it. Not self-righteous, but evangelical. It has to be in your soul. You have to transmit that evangelical sense to other human beings. And I would tell you that this might surprise you, but I was an introvert as a child. And I've always been insecure about what I couldn't do. But I've had the chutzpah to go ahead and do something. I would tell you in the same breath, incidentally, that it is healthy for you and me to be insecure from time to time, assuming we can rise to the occasion. But it is an American tragedy that a 5 or 6-year-old in kindergarten or first grade already has made up his or her mind, I can't do this stuff. And so teaching frequently in America is as much triaging as teaching. I didn't vote for the class size amendment in 2002 because the evidence is not really there about class size. What's really important, nature of the kids in the classroom, socially, emotionally, developmentally, behaviorally, cognitively, physically. I didn't vote for it because I think, what have we got, 60 people here, something like that today, whatever it is? You all know when to raise your hand, you know when to smile, you know when to laugh. You are, as they say with children, self-regulated, self-disciplined. So there's no problem teaching 60 people, and I'm not arguing for 60 people. I'm saying that's not the most important point. The point is the nature of the child in the classroom and the quality of the teacher. And really good teachers make an extraordinary difference. And if I ask any one of you who your favorite teachers are, you can tell me, couldn't you? I can remember Mrs. Sullivan in first grade. I come from a generation where teachers did not have first names. If they did, I was never told about this. But I can remember Mrs. Sullivan in first grade, and that's 71 years ago. That's the power of a teacher in your life. And now that's a challenge too, because I have 6 sisters that all went to FSU or Florida and became teachers at a time when 5 to 7% of law and medical schools were women. I bet you'd be hard pressed to find either a law or medical school that isn't at least 50% women now. It's an extraordinary change. Has real implications for schools and colleges of education. So,
Dave, you started talking about the strategic planning sessions, and you set some ground rules for those strategic planning sessions. I was really intrigued by one of them where you said, we're not going to talk about money here. Why is that important? Is that something that we should consider here as we start those conversations? And when do we start talking about it?
boy, well, that's really a smart question in my estimation. Truly. And if you come away thinking, if you come away with the same sense I have, I think you'll be better off for it. So literally in my community, we have thousands of nonprofits. Thousands upon thousands of good people. And before I even started what I was saying with Dr. Torres, I did 3 sessions myself with 100+ people, of good people in the community, and heard over and over again, I'm with you totally, now can I get some more money? And I'm not telling you that money is unimportant. I think it's quite important. But it isn't the most important thing to me. Instead of focusing on, we'll give you X amount more, let's focus on what we ought to do. And then, what might that cost to do that? The first question is, give me some more money. The first question is, what do the children of my community need, and how do I get there?
So along those lines, you also talked, you alluded about it earlier, that we should not only rely on public funding. We need to look at private funding very closely. And you mentioned all the key groups that need to be there. How do we raise that private funding? We can't just rely on 1 or 2 individuals. So how can we generate that?
Well, how many of you raise money in this room for one thing or another at any level? Almost all of you do. So you know what it is. People give to people. There's no shortage of good causes. It might be a medical cause, a science cause, a helping children cause. No shortage of folks who tell you they need money. I think much money, incidentally, is raised by CEOs from CEOs. That's how it works. How else does it work? It works by building relationships. Well, to build relationships, you need to have some things to talk about. I have all my life read at least a book a week. I've traveled a lot. I went to may remember there was an evil Nazi doctor named Joseph Mengele with 3,000 sets of twins with his spirit. What am I in my job? I'm the same thing I always was. I tell stories. Stories connect with people. You can give the broad overwords, but the connections come from stories. And I told you I wasn't a cynical person, and I'm not. So I'm just not building relationships so at some time I can scarf up somebody else's money. Because I don't think it would work very well. So relationships are long term. And it's a matter of people trusting you. And I told the story in a book about a man named Mike Fernandez, who's one of the 30 I mentioned earlier. He lives in an extraordinary home on the water, as you might suspect. There's a helicopter pad in the back. The house is 44,500 square feet under air, which is slightly larger than this whole table right here. Unless anybody, no, okay. And I got to know him because we made his money buying and selling companies, most of them in the health insurance field. And I didn't meet him until about 20 years ago because the mayor of the county asked the two of us to head a task force on children's health insurance. But I kept up with him and sent him books and talked with him about things. And our first grandchild was baptized at the Vatican, so he needed to do the same thing, but in a significantly more elaborate way than we did. Very significantly more elaborate way than we did. And he ended up having a grandchild who had 18 spleens and organs scrambled. She was either going to have a major league operation, survive, or a major league operation and would die. And so he had the operation at what was then called Miami Children's Hospital. She lived and is doing fine now and is caught up developmentally, basically. And he was sort of overjoyed and decided he would walk El Camino de Santiago. Anybody done this? It's a very famous pilgrimage, about 1,100 years old, across the top of northern Spain. There was a movie called The Way with Martin Sheen that told the story quite accurately. 250,000 people walk it each year. It's 508 miles if you walk the whole thing. He decided he'd walk it in return for pledges. And so he did this and told the hospital, you can't spend a nickel of this on painting the building, fixing up the building, or a single piece of equipment. It's got to be spent for kids who couldn't afford this kind of extraordinary thing. So he raised some millions for that. And then he decided to do a book, and several of us suggested he do a book about this pilgrimage. And so ultimately he said to me, I'll do it if you'll shepherd it. I have, in fact, in my office, Christian must have seen it, a 6-foot-tall shepherd staff, which he sent over. So if there are any sheep in the office, I am fully prepared to handle these. And he wanted to pay me. I don't think you charge friends for stuff. So I helped him get some writing help, and I edited the book myself. And we needed a marketing plan and a communications plan and a design plan and a such and such. And so it was all done. It came out. It's a lovely book. And so he invited me and somebody else who had helped, and his wife and himself. We flew in a private plane, his, across the ocean to Santiago, which is in northern Spain, toward the western part of Spain. And we walked the last leg, which is 17 to 2 miles, 110 kilometers. You do it in a few days, but it'll test you. And you stay in farmhouses, there's no hotels. And you sort of feel it's very spiritual. And the fourth night in, this was about a 6-night walk. The fourth night in, we're at a farmhouse and we're having some red wine and talking. And he said, at one point, everybody's feeling good that evening. They're exhausted, but everybody's feeling good. And he said to the table, you know, I'm about to sell my next company, and Dave, I'll give you $5 million unsolicited. There are an extraordinary number of good people out there. I've done far more in the world by expecting that there are good people out there, and there are lots of good people out there. But I think you need to raise, as you move forward in Indian River County, you're going to need significant resources to make it work. And the people who will, maybe you'll get some from the X Foundation and the Y Foundation, but it'll be mostly people in this community. And it won't be a fortune. That'll get this thing started underway and that have real momentum.
So Dave, Alachua County and Lee County are now supporting sustainable funding. Lee County approved the half-cent sales tax?
Yes, but that's not the same thing.
But it's not,
Okay.
it's clearly not the same thing. But how can we learn from those local movements?
Okay, so here are the two counties that you might think of. First, think of Alachua, which is about 300,000 plus people, home of the University of Florida, Santa Fe College, and so forth. And then think of Tallahassee, which is Leon County. Both of them wanted to do this last year. The people in Leon County, I think they're going to make it in 2020, but the people in Leon County essentially said what Janet Reno said, we're on the side of the angels, everybody will vote for this. And they ended up with significant public opposition, including from elected officials. Alachua County moved quietly, raised some money, private money, and got the support of every city commissioner, every county commissioner, and every member of the school board. In an issues campaign, it's not like a candidate campaign. In a candidate campaign, you're supposed to really smash the opponent. In an issue campaign, in my view, you're supposed to neutralize the opponent and help him or her to explain why this is good for the community and so forth and so on. County commissioners instinctively, and I'm not sure I want unelected people handing out public money to half-mill property tax or a mill property tax. If you did it, I feel sure you'd start with a half-mill, which is what we do. Half-mill in Miami-Dade County raises $150 million a year. It isn't small for early intervention and prevention. But even if it's only some millions of dollars, and if you think in terms of collaboration with other people, you can do really wonderful things. But you have to, I spent 2 years of my life trying to get this done. And because the first polling showed you have 40% support. It can be done, but you gotta be patient. And you gotta be political. And you need to do polling. And you need to make sure that elected officials are comfortable with what you're doing. And you need to make sure, this is a crucially important point, that you are not there so the county commission can then say, well, we don't need to fund this anymore. This is like the Florida lottery 35 years ago, which is, it was passed for education. In fact, it is still used for education, but in a world of fungible money, the people end up being cheated. New and special and additional things don't get done as a result of the Florida lottery. And there's a temptation if you're on the county commission in Miami-Dade, you know, these folks have a bunch of money. Let them do that from now on. Then the community ends up getting nothing particularly different.
Is there one piece of legislation that we should be watching very closely for this session, Dave, that will ultimately pass?
No, it's way too late because the legislature will end next week. There is a legislator, Erin Rawl, who a bunch of you know her, who has the full faith on this topic, cares about it deeply. The big issue is never slots. Do we have a slot for this? But what's the quality? Because only quality brings real outcomes. And she knows that deeply, intimately, smartly, but you still got to work the process. Her bill will not pass this year, but I think it's got a heck of a chance next year, which is, frankly, we need more assurance of what the outcomes are and what the quality is. And I think we're moving closer to it. Remember in all of this that you and I get uptight about a specific moment or even a specific year, but it's hard to know where you are in history when you were living it. Somebody years later will figure out what it meant, but it's hard to know at the time. I think there is no question, because I can see pockets of the movement all over this country. I will speak in August in Fresno, California, before 650 people who are excited about this issue and are doing a bunch of things. I spoke in Atlanta recently. I've spoken in Charlotte recently. The next 2 days I'm in Jacksonville talking in two different, before a total of 600 people. There's a lot of excitement about this topic. So while I'm disappointed in what didn't happen with her, I have a lot of strong feelings that it will. Incidentally, if you're spending, which we are in this state, $400 million of the people's money on pre-K, citizens have every right to expect that it'll be high quality and we'll have real outcomes. And we're not there yet.
And what does that high quality pre-K look like? I know that there are a lot of commoners in the room, but what does it look like?
Well, first of all, I claim no expertise on the subject, and I, in fact, draw comfort in the fact that I work with a lot of people smarter than I am and more knowledgeable than I, who have spent their whole lives on this subject. And I see, for instance, how many people are involved in child care in this room? It's not an overpaid profession. Child care professionals make less than parking lot attendants do in America. And this may seem too radical to you, but if you look at study economics, there are certain professions that are seen as women's professions. Teaching is another example. Social workers, another example. Child care is a profound example. And it is foolish for us not to pay people who are helping our children a wage commensurate with responsibilities and devotion. 80% of child care in America is storage and warehousing. My children are college educated and have families, and yet when they went to look for child care, they got a lot of help from me, but they really didn't know what to look for. They wanted their children to be safe at the end of the day. They wanted to be able to afford it, and they wanted something that was related to their home or work in terms of location. That hasn't said a thing about the quality of the place. And so we'll never create the full demand, the full supply until we can create a real demand on our parents for high quality ones that we know have real outcomes. Accreditation as opposed to licensing is part of that. There are a bunch of ways that you get accredited. The most famous one is NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, but there are other ones. You want children to have brain-stimulating environments. And the other thing I'd swiftly say is that I want children to spend a lot of time playing. I think it's really important for children to play, to learn a lot from play. When our 5 children all went to Montessori at age 2.5, it wasn't because we were trying to drive them out of the home. It was because we wanted them to learn to play with other children, be with other children. You can learn a lot of things from play. So I'm not for taking away a child's childhood.
So that's a very important piece because there are a lot of critics in terms of the increase in accountability. How can we create that balance between learning, playing, and discovery and the increase in accountability, particularly at those early years?
So if we had, this has been years of the struggle to get this, and we are ever closer to it in Florida. But if you put your child in there are 6,000 plus providers in pre-K in Florida. About 12% are faith-based, about 12% are public school-based, and that 76% is Wee Willie Winkle or whatever the name of the place is. And so you got a lot of different providers. You could never have a full public pre-K system. Who could afford to do that? What would be the capital cost of adding on to various schools, et cetera? That's not practical. And I don't think our job is to drive out the private providers in any way. Our job is to help them attain ever higher quality, make sure we have incentives for that, and so forth and so on. I fundamentally believe that all of us need to learn more about what makes a child successful, and then we need to have them in settings that will increase their success. And we will need, in every child entering pre-K in the state of Florida needs to have an assessment, not a test, and the assessment ought to be social and emotional as well as cognitive. Those result, and they're easy to do, it's not a complicated business, and they need to absolutely be shared with the parents who have the first responsibility of knowing where their children are so they can be a partner to the caregiver. And then in a program of real quality, you would do that several times during the quote school year, and you would do one at the end of the year. What kind of progress did we make? And so Florida generally has moved down a path of a kindergarten readiness assessment done in the first 6 to 8 weeks of kindergarten. The problem is that doesn't tell you a thing about what progress the child has made. You follow me? All you know is a point in time and where the child stands. Well, you could have a child who, boy, had gotten the most stimulating, caring, nurturing time at home and was rocking and rolling, and books were there, and books were read with the child and so forth, and the child goes to a perfectly awful child care center. And the child's going to enter kindergarten and going to be in great shape. Children are quite resilient. You could also have a child who enters a major league quality line, but is stunningly far behind, and then makes significant progress, but the child is still significantly behind the other child I described. You follow me? So just simply doing a kindergarten readiness assessment isn't going to tell you much. So you need high quality assessments before then, and in a better world, at the end of the year, you would share those assessments with the next teacher. So she or he is not learning all from the start about how Juan or John or whomever is doing. Would have a head start on learning how well the child is doing. That's all. None of this is deeply complicated, but all of it is profoundly important.
Dave, you talk so candidly about the challenges and experiences that you had with your own children growing up. One of them contracted the German measles, and how your family was able to navigate the system, and how we should insist on decency and service for all of our families. How do we get to that point, the nonprofits, the organizations that are here today?
So I'll tell you a very personal story. My wife was pregnant within our first child between 2 or 3 months and got German measles, a major case of German. There are no more German measles in this country. It was a great epidemic. We got all kinds of advice. You can guess what the advice was. I was working at the St. Petersburg Times, and then 2.5 years later or so, I went to the Washington Post, and we had our oldest child was in. We saw an ad in a weekly newspaper, Montgomery County, Maryland, and NIH was testing the mothers and the offspring of the last great German measles epidemic, and tested 125 mothers and children. And there were only 2 of those children without stunning impacts. One of them was David Lawrence III, who, it turns out, has scar tissue behind his eyes, cannot hear certain kinds of sounds, and we went to Easter Civil for years, etc. He's now an appellate lawyer in the state of New York. But you got to be able to work the system. So I'll tell you a highly personal story of the last few days. I've been married for 55 years, love my wife more than when we were married. I can't tell you how much she has contributed to my being successful. I haven't handled money for 55 years. I write 5 checks a year. I don't handle any bills. I didn't do shopping. I didn't wash the dishes. I didn't mow the lawn. But it was, and though I think that I was a caring, loving father, I'd give her far more credit than I would. So for a set of reasons, beginning in January, my wife has been tested. And last Friday, she has Alzheimer's, which is a very significant thing. How many people have been associated with Alzheimer's in their families? Wow. Lots of people. And so I'm working through the University of Miami Health System. And I have a major league neurologist and a major league neuropsychologist. And I'm now, and have been for a couple months now, doing things that I never thought I would do. I see it as the next chapter in life. I see it as a lot that I'm going to learn. The thing I most need to learn is patience. And I have never been patient about anything. Never been patient. That would be the soul of impatience. And I have to know how to work the system. And I have to have enough resources. I can't tell you what a bureaucracy it is to deal with the University of Miami Health System. And I know the dean of the medical school. And I know lots of people. Punch this number, punch another number, punch another number, punch another number, and maybe you'll get somebody, and maybe that person will call you back. And don't tell me it doesn't happen in Indian River County. So technology, no doubt, will put in at least partly to make things more customer friendly. But I know how to work the world well enough. This will sound arrogant. By God, you damn well you return my calls. I return everybody's call and everybody's email. Phil Long can testify. The same day, and I could be in Bangladesh. I expect other people to respond to me the same day, even if they were to tell me it's going to take a couple of days to get you back an answer, Dave or Mr. Lawrence. I was smart enough in 2000 to buy a significant long-term care insurance. How many of you have long-term care insurance policies? The rest of you better get it. They're really important. This is stunningly expensive kind of stuff. And you do not want to depend on Medicaid where you essentially cannot have any money. But just thinking, I was talking to my wife yesterday, just imagine people who don't know how to work the system and don't have the resources. And the people we're talking about whose lives you want to make full and important. An extraordinary number of them don't know how to work the system. Lady, we don't do that here. Go there. And particularly true in a place like Miami with all its different cultures and sometimes language challenges. So, in the best world, whether it's child care or people who are much older, we need it. I don't think we'll ever have a real system, so I'm not arguing for that because I don't think it'll happen. But we need to have a path that is convenient and comfortable with people and they are respected when they try to enter the system and so forth. We have this thing called the Children's Trust, which operates on, we have to pass it locally, but operates under a state statute. It's government in the sunshine. I have no problems with government in the sunshine. I, in a sense, took advantage of it, yes, did Phil and Janie and so forth. But what I have said to the people of the Children's Trust is, I don't want you behaving like a government bureaucracy. I'm not anti-government. I think there are a stunning number of good people who work for the government. But I can't tell you all that I've told, we don't do it here. And I spend a lot of my time helping other people to work the system because they don't know how to get a second opinion. That makes sense to you? So as you're thinking about figuring out all of this, how do you make it genuinely respectful and thoughtful and sensitive and compassionate for everyone? A very close friend of mine, that Phil will remember, Joe Natoli, great human being. He was president of the Herald when I was a publisher, then goes off to run a couple of other newspapers. Then he ends up being CFO of the University of Miami, working directly for Dr. Chaleo, you know. And somebody I'm quite close to who was a distinguished figure was in the University of Miami Hospital. Joe was saying to his wife, Jennifer, boy, isn't it great the kind of quality she's getting? Yes, it was so. And Jennifer says to him, you really have done something if this is the care that everyone gets. And that's just not true now, right? Is it any different in Vero Beach? I think so.
I was really struck by those words, decency and service, as you shared in the book, Dave. I was moved by reading the book. I'm moved by this conversation, but I'm going to turn it over to folks in the audience who might have some questions. We have a couple minutes for some questions. Shannon Maitland, who's in the back, is going to help us with the microphone. So if anyone would like to ask Dave a question, this is the time to do so, please.
Go ahead, you do it without, okay. Great.
What do you think about taking education at the early childhood as far as through high school, through 12th grade, and making it year-round? Do you think that will help with some of the issues that we struggle with today?
Well, I think we have significantly too short a school year. If you go to places like Japan, you can see a very different way of looking at things. You know how it came to be. It came to be because we were an agricultural country and we needed kids to bring in the harvest and lots of other kinds of things. So yes, I think that we need a longer school year, and I think it needs to be broken up in a number of ways. I'm not suggesting there aren't breaks at Christmas, Easter, Passover, certain times of the year, but I don't know any kids bringing in harvest anymore. And working the year around. It's not as though parents, most of the parents, most of the parents, have real jobs. They're not taking off the whole summer, etc. So, yeah, I think you seriously would consider a longer school day. I think you would compensate teachers more respectably than they are doing it. I think you could think of a longer school day. I was at a school yesterday, private school in Miami-Dade called Palmer Trinity. It's a private school. And if you come to my county, we have the fourth biggest school system in the United States of America. So it's a big, big place with a very impressive superintendent who has been superintendent of the year, et cetera. Smart, political in the best sense, et cetera. And so classically in schools, Title I, students get a free and reduced lunch and breakfast. And so he, and in Broward, I don't know what you do in Indian River County, but all children get breakfast in Miami-Dade. Now, I'm at this private school yesterday, and we've had our children in both public and private schools, and I'm at Palmer Trinity, which is about, all in, about $38,000 a year. And it's clearly a wonderful school and very academically based and has real scholarships to help some people get in. And I'm talking to the head of school, Patrick Roberts, a really smart guy and caring, and I'm meeting with the senior staff and seeing the school. And they have free breakfast. And the school is open from 7 in the morning. Doesn't teach at that point, but it's open from 7 in the morning, and you can stay there until 6. What's that tell you? Somebody who's aware of what the world is today. It isn't, I get there at 8:15 and then I'm out by 2:45, which so many schools are. And he doesn't have to do free breakfast, but I can just imagine, I was talking to Vance Luke, the person I mentioned, on the phone this morning and talking about all this. And Vance has 3 very young children, including a child less than a year old. And I was talking to him about visiting this and talking about the world we live in now, where frequently both people in the home, if there are 2 people, adults in the home, are working outside the home. You're running your tail off. You got to be somewhere. But now with this school, you know that the child can go there a bit earlier and can have breakfast. Because the scene is gone, in my view, where the family sits down at the breakfast table. You could watch an old Blondie and Jackie, and you could find their breakfast table. Well, everybody's running so fast that having all the children at the dinner table is rare. But imagine the breakfast table. They were reading the paper. Hey, Mabel, did you see what I saw in the paper? And so forth and so on. Very different world. We're going to need, like the headmaster of Palmer Trinity, we're going to need to find some ways that are significantly more customer sensitive. And we're going to get better and smarter people as a consequence. Any other questions? Yes.
So there's a number of people in this room that have been working for the last year on evaluating a children's council for Indian River County. And we have done polling. You made 2 points in your presentation. You talked that Miami-Dade did the fundraising for that through a PAC. And then I assume that when you would say for Alachua County, because they did it, quote, quietly, because they probably just relied on charitable contributions. Why would Miami do the PAC, and why would Alachua, or however you pronounce it, raise money differently, and what are the pros and cons?
I don't think it was particularly raised differently. Alachua had a PAC as well. You're not going to get an issue on the ballot, but you're not going to have a PAC.
So why do you say that? As long as why can't a quiet group raise the money? As long as you have the money, why would it have to be in a PAC format as opposed to just in a separate account that's not a PAC through a 501c3?
I'm not smart enough to answer that. All I know is it's the law. How the law came to be, I don't know, but I feel quite sure if you moved ahead, ultimately, I think you got a lot of things you want to do before then. But I think you Beach County had a pact when it passed twice the Children's Services Council. So did Broward, so did Hillsborough, so did Pinellas, so did Martin and St. Lucie. You're going to need to raise money. You are running an election. An election is a political event. I suppose, in theory, I haven't thought about it, because it seems in the land of the impractical, that several of you can get together and you can do a bunch of billboards and direct mail and not have a pack. It would feel very unprofessional to me and not real smart. You need to give as many people as possible a chance to contribute. You don't want one person given a huge chunk of money. I tell a story in the book about somebody on a railroad pension who gave $5. I still remember Rose and Joe Munn. I think it's important for as many people as possible to have ownership of whatever they do.
Mr. Lawrence, thank you for coming today. I followed you through Flacy. Hi.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
My name is Julie Perry, and I own a private preschool in the county. We are full service, 6:30 to 6, do the breakfast, meeting the customers' needs, as you just indicated. One of the things that we've seen in our industry, one of the things that you mentioned, is that we need to have parents demand the quality. My concern is how do we get them to understand what quality is, and that's our job, is to help them inform them of that. But when we have 30% of our students not ready for kindergarten, and that's been going on for a while, that's not a recent number. Therefore, we have a workforce currently that doesn't understand quality. It is exactly it's a consumer market, it's a service industry, so they're saying, where's your location, how much is it, is my kid going to be safe? And then our job as early childhood providers and our coalitions and other agencies is to provide that information. But they're still not seeming to grasp it. My concern is we want the quality, we want to move forward, we want our parents to be a part of that, but they are still not getting it. And I'm just concerned that as much as we want it to be, the cohesiveness and convening and all of the terms used, is how do we get the parents to understand the quality when we just feel like we're beating our head against the door?
So tell me say it again, what you're responsible for.
I believe in early childhood education. Not only is it our responsibility to have those high-quality teachers.
No, but talk about it.
For me, myself.
Yes.
Myself, as an advocate in early childhood and the director and owner of my program, I want to educate our parents on what quality is. And I'm very small in the significant population of our industry. But how, as a cohesive unit, can we get that message out? The parents need to be more demanding of the quality.
So this will be a too highfalutin answer for you. I am deeply eager in my country and my community for inspirational leadership. I read a lot of history. I think I know something about what the characteristics are. I want my governor, I want my mayor of my community, I want my president to be inspirational, to take us to some higher mountaintop. I also know that it's very, very hard for you and me to know where we are at any point. I certainly buy your point. There are an extraordinary number of people who have never heard of this. That means we have a growing job of explaining to folks what this is all about. The Carnegie Corporation study of the brain research came out in the early 90s. That ought to be enough to tell people in theory. But most parents I've ever talked to have never heard of this. I spend an extraordinary amount of my time making the case, taking the case to other places, etc. I'm afraid that's what you're destined to do as well. Remember, you have a county of 150,000. You got a heck of a shot of selling people on this topic. How long it takes, I don't know. But I've made with a lot of other people, significant progress in my own community by talking to people at every level. I've known every governor in his lifetime from Roy Collins on. We first came to this state in 1956, so I have a sense then, even though I spent a number of years outside of the state. I'm hungry for the governor to make part of his mission the imperative of early childhood. I think one of the more exciting things that I've been involved in is helping to convert, he would tell you this, Mark Wilson, who's head of the Florida Chamber. The Florida Council of 100 is very much on board on this subject. We got a long way to go. Again, we don't know where we are, but you all can do this in Indian River County, and I do very much work with Publix. Publix is a fairly good player in this community.
Yes.
Very significant. I shop only in Publix, etc. I think the Barnett family is one of the great families of the state. Carol Barnett for years has been deeply devoted to this subject. We do a reading and tutoring program, in which we have several thousand tutors throughout the state. It's paid for by Publix. You need to get everybody in this community involved. Part of it in large cosmic ways, part of it by your individual tutoring. I wish I could tell you that I could see the promised land just over the horizon, but I don't. And again, I don't know where we are in history. I know how important this is. I know we have converted a bunch of people. I went to Rick Scott on this subject. I've known Rick Scott for about 30 years because he used to come to the Herald to talk about the hospital business. And he didn't really think about anything about this subject, but he got very interested when he had grandchildren. That's another opportunity for all of us. It's hard to know where you are when you're trying to do something significantly different. But I don't think you have any choice except to move down this path, or our whole country is in trouble. Literally in trouble. It's not guaranteed that we will have this for public. Does that sound too alarmist to some of you? We are in my 77 years, we are a more angry, uptight, and frequently hateful country than we ever have been in my lifetime. And I certainly remember 1968 and Vietnam and riot and rebellion in cities and so forth. But I've never seen anything like this. And it's aided and abetted by social media. Real pluses with social media, while major downsides on it as well. But social media ought to be an extraordinary tool. I'd love to give you a simpler answer, but I don't have one today.
Dave, it's been an honor to have you here in Indian River County. I want to end with a line from your book where you say, "A single theme will endure to my last breath, the exhilarating joy of service." You are certainly the embodiment of service. We were honored to have you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Torres. Thank you all for